I was not a man who asked for things. 51 years of not asking had served me well enough. I'd come home from the Mekong Delta in 1973 with 2 Purple Hearts, a Bronze Star, and a ringing in my left ear that never fully went away, and I had not asked a single person for a thing since the day I walked off that transport plane and found the airport empty of welcome. I got a cab. I paid the fare. I went home. That was how I was built. My father was the same way, and his father before him. Dempsey men did not sit on porches and wait for the world to bring them something. We worked, we were quiet about it, and we did not complain. So by the time the winter of my 74th year came in hard off the Cumberland Plateau and the furnace in my room at the Creekside Arms stopped working on a Tuesday night in October, I did what I always did. I put on my extra wool socks and my field jacket and I slept in the chair nearest the window where the draft was smallest, and I told nobody. The Creekside Arms was not a proud place to live. It was a boarding house that the VA contracted with to house veterans who could not manage on their own, which was a generous way of saying it was a worn-out building on the east side of Harlan where old men like me ended up when the choices ran out. My room was 12 feet by 14. The radiator had a leak that left a rust stain on the baseboard shaped like a bird in flight. The window lock was broken and whistled in the wind. There were 6 of us on the second floor, each in his own room, and we passed each other in the hallway sometimes and nodded and went on our way. We did not know much about each other's service. We did not ask. There is a kind of loneliness that veterans understand, not the loneliness of being alone, but of being among people who cannot find a way to say the thing that matters, so they say nothing. That was the Creekside Arms. I did not complain about those things either, because complaining required believing that someone was listening, and I had stopped believing that a long time ago. My granddaughter Lily was 10 years old that November and she visited me every Saturday. Her mother, my daughter Carol, would drop her at the corner and she would walk the half-block to the creekside with a brown paper bag that usually had a biscuit in it from the diner on Maple, sometimes a little jar of Carol's apple butter. Lily was a serious child, the kind who listened more than she talked, with eyes that took inventory of a room the way mine used to before I learned to stop seeing things clearly. That Saturday she sat across from me at my small table and I watched her take inventory of the room and I watched her see what I had not told her, that the radiator was cold, that the frost had crept inside the window glass, that I had on every layer I owned including the field jacket, that the biscuit she'd brought was the first thing I'd eaten since Thursday. She did not say anything then. She poured the apple butter, she asked me what I remembered about her grandmother, and I told her the story of the time Eleanor and I drove all the way to Gatlinburg and got a flat tire in the rain, and Lily laughed in the right places. When Carol's car pulled up at noon, Lily hugged me carefully, the way children hug old men, aware of the fragility, and she was gone. I did not know where she went after that. I found out later. Carol told me the whole of it, and then Lily told me her part herself, sitting in the same chair across from me where the room was warm by then and the windows were sealed and I had eaten a hot meal. After Carol dropped her at home, Lily walked 3 blocks in the other direction to Reuben's Diner on Maple Street. She had $1.75 in her coat pocket, which was her allowance from the week. She went in and sat at the counter and she waited until the man on the stool 2 down from her, a large man in a leather vest with patches on the shoulders and a beard the color of creek gravel, looked up from his coffee. She said, "Excuse me, sir. My grandfather is a veteran and he hasn't eaten since Thursday and his heat doesn't work and I don't know what to do about it." That was all she said. She had thought about it carefully on the walk over and decided that was the full truth and the full truth was what the situation required. She had 10 years old and 3 blocks and $1.75 in her pocket, and she had used all of it. The man set down his coffee. He looked at her for a moment. Later, when he told me this part, he said she had the straightest spine he had ever seen on a 10-year-old. He said she looked like somebody who had used up all her other options and had decided to try the truth. He asked her 2 questions. He asked what street, and he asked what branch. She told him Creekside Arms on Linden, and she told him Army, Vietnam, 2 tours. He nodded once. He took out his phone and he made a call. While he was on the phone, the woman behind the counter brought Lily a hot chocolate without being asked, and slid it across without a word, the way people do in small towns when they understand that a thing is serious. Lily drank the hot chocolate and walked home. I did not know any of this had happened until the following Monday evening. I was in the chair by the window in my field jacket with a wool blanket across my lap and the portable radio going low when I heard the sound outside. I want to describe it accurately, so I will tell you that it started as a low rumble at the edge of my hearing, the kind of sound that when I was 22 and humping through the delta I would have identified instantly and been on my feet before it resolved. It built, and by the time it was fully present, it was the sound of engines, many of them, more than I could count, idling to stillness on Linden Street below my window. I got up. I looked out. The street was full of motorcycles. Not a few. Not a dozen. The whole length of Linden from the creekside entrance to the corner 3 houses down was lined with them, 2 deep on each side, and the men sitting on them or standing beside them wore leather vests and MC patches, and they were so many that the overflow was beginning to fill the cross street. I counted into the 50s and lost the thread. My window was cold under my hand. There was a knock at my door. I opened it and the man from the diner was standing in my hallway. He was even larger than he'd looked on the stool. He had a red patch on his left shoulder that said Road Captain, and his name, which I will not give you because he told me plainly he did not want recognition for this, was stitched in white thread above his breast pocket. He was holding a casserole dish covered in foil, and behind him in the hall were 2 other men, and one of them was carrying a box of groceries and the other had a duffel bag over one shoulder. He said, "Sir, your granddaughter came to see us Saturday." I said I had heard. He said, "We made some calls this morning. Your pension case has been reopened and a supervisor at the regional office has been assigned personally. The backlog that froze your payment was a filing error and it will be corrected by end of week. We've covered your back rent through the end of the year with the house manager downstairs." He paused. "A heating contractor is coming at 8 tomorrow morning to look at the furnace. That's already paid." I did not say anything. There was a sensation in my chest that I did not have a clean name for and that I was not going to investigate standing in the doorway of a 12 by 14 room. He said, "We know what you did over there." And that was the one I was not ready for. I had lived 51 years with people who did not know and had not asked, and I had made my peace with that long ago, or I had told myself I had, which is a thing that works fine in the daylight. Standing there in the hallway, I discovered it had not actually worked as well as I thought. I said, "That was a long time ago." He said, "Yes, sir. It was. But it counts the same." He handed me the casserole dish. He said there were men outside who had driven from as far as Knoxville and Lexington and one group from across the state line in Virginia, and they would like my permission to pay their respects if I was willing to come to the door. I said I reckoned I could do that. I put on my bronze star. I do not know why. I had not worn it in 30 years, it lived in a cigar box in the top of my closet along with Eleanor's wedding ring and 3 photographs, but I found myself taking it out of the box and pinning it to my field jacket without making a conscious decision to do so, and then I went downstairs. The evening air hit me when the front door opened and I could see the full length of it then, the whole ordered mass of them stretching down the street and around the corner in the cold November dark, their breath rising, the engines quiet now, 163 men in leather and patches standing with their hands folded or their arms crossed, and when I came through the door they did not cheer and they did not make noise. They took off their hats. Every one of them, down the whole length of the street as far as I could see in the dark, took off his hat. I am not going to tell you I held it together. I am 74 years old and I spent 51 years being a man who did not ask for things and did not need things and was not affected by things, and I will tell you plainly that I stood on the front step of the Creekside Arms on Linden Street in Harlan, Tennessee with my bronze star on my chest, and I wept. Not loudly. Not in the way that requires description. But my eyes gave way, and I let them, and the road captain who was standing to my left made no comment on it, which was the right call. After a moment he raised his arm, and the men at the front of the left column raised his, and what moved down those 2 long lines of men was a salute. Not the military kind, crisp and by the book. The kind that men give when they have not been trained to give it but mean it absolutely, a right hand raised to the brow, held there, in the cold, by 163 people who had driven hours through November dark to stand on a street and tell one old man that what he had done and what he had given and what he had come home carrying alone for 51 years was not invisible. That it had been seen. That it was counted. I want to tell you I stood straight for it. I want to tell you my back was military straight and my chin was level and I received it the way a soldier is supposed to receive a thing. But my knees had gone uncertain under me, and the road captain put a hand on my elbow, just a hand on an elbow, nothing more, steady and unhurried, and I was grateful for it in a way I will not try to dress up into something more dignified than it was. I raised my hand back. It shook a little, but I held it. The heating contractor came at 8 the next morning. The pension correction arrived by Friday. By the following Saturday, when Lily came with her brown paper bag, the room was warm enough that I had taken off the field jacket, and she noticed, and she did not say anything about it, just hung up her coat and sat down across from me and asked me what I remembered about the time my unit got lost in the rain for 3 days in Quang Tri province, which was a story I had told her before and she always wanted to hear again. I told it to her. The room was warm. Every December since then, a card arrives at the creekside. No return address, just an Appalachian postmark and a short line inside. This past December it said what it usually says, that they remember. That they'll be back if they're ever needed. I keep the cards in the cigar box with the bronze star and Eleanor's ring and the 3 photographs. Some boxes carry more weight than they look like they should. That is how I know what a man is actually made of.